Just in a moment. I'm just trying to live stream. How many of us have been in an interview before? Just by show of hands. Have you been subjected to an interview? Yes, Jen. Tell me about your experience. How was it?
You can still keep your hands up. Like I can see Malish, I also saw Jane,
Malish,
and also James.
James. Yeah, just one or two people to share their experience from their first interview.
Okay, there are 5.
We don't need everybody, but just somebody who is willing. I'd like to talk to Vera. Vera, I don't know if we've spoke before here, so tell me about your experience. What type of interview were you in, and how was your experience like?
Yes, good afternoon, Brenda, Sam, and the colleagues. Vera, I don't know, am I audible enough?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay. Yes, so I was in a recruitment. I was part of the panelists that were recruiting for a position. I work as a HR assistant, and so I was with the manager. I was with the CFO. It was for a finance officer, and I was new. I had just completed my probation period, but I was included in the panel team to, of course, yes, by my manager then. So it was a bit intense. It was intense. A lot of technical terms, especially being it from the finance. So more questions were coming from the finance manager because automatically the candidate was going to join his team, and so the questions were coming from every corner, and the candidate ended up, of course, being a bit shy. It was shaking, and I could understand where the tension was coming from. So, but there were others because he wasn't the only candidate. There were about 5 or 6, and you find others are really overqualified for that very same position, and everybody would. One of the candidate actually answered most of the questions, and he was in turn the one asking, the panelists, when they asked him, "Do you have any questions for us or any feedback or comment?" He was throwing in big questions, and he got the job because he was too confident. He knew what he was doing. He answered every question, and he, of course, looked for clarification from the team after. So it was a great experience, and I learned from there. And at least now I do interviews on maybe with 2 others. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Who else has a hand up? Let's say Julius.
Yes, Brenda.
Yes, please.
Let me hope that I'm audible enough.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
First and foremost, I would like to thank you for giving me this chance, and my greeting to you and the team there.
Thank you.
Second, my greeting goes to all the fellows, the members who have joined today, and those who have not made it. I have been to interview, and I had some experience. And first, I had my interview 4 years back when I was right from the secondary level, and then there were some volunteers needed in one of the field. Then I volunteered for 2 weeks. Then after this, they encouraged me to apply. And then I make my application. I draft it to them. When I applied, they also called me for the written interview. And that one was not so hard because it was what I volunteered for. And the written was very good. Now, coming to the oral, it was a little bit like it was my first time, and I was not having much experience about it before, but I tried to manage it. You know, what I put it to myself is I take away fear and I listen to them, and I answer also the questions that they ask me. And by then, after it, so I was very happy, and I came out of the interview. And after one day, they called me to go and work to go and work with them. And I even wondered because the person who even interviewed me, when he called me, he said, "Julius, you have made it, but I am really very happy with the way how you handle your confidence and how you handle your fears and how you answered the questions." So I think that's the experience that I had. And again, last time, early this year, I applied for a teaching position, and that one, because I had experience now, there was no fear, and I did the interview very well. I think that's the whole experience that I had in my previous time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And just from the two shares, you can already see that interviews are more about confidence, right? So today we want to be able to see how we can do our interviews with a lot of confidence. Right? So the session is going to be more about how you show up when opportunity meets pressure. Because at this point, you have an opportunity, but you are under pressure. Because an interview is one of the most, this is one of those moments where everything you have written in your CV, everything you have experienced, everything you believe you can offer is now brought into conversation. And for many people, that is where the challenge begins. You may have the skills, you may have the experience, you may even be deeply, deeply qualified, right? But when the question is asked, the room becomes quiet and all attention is on you. Some people freeze, some rush, some speak without structure, some give answers that are true but not powerful. Some walk away thinking, I knew the answer, but I did not say it well. And that's the kind of gap that we want to be able to close with you today. It's not only going to be about knowing the interview questions, because sometimes, as much as you're going to prepare, it's very hard for you to know the interview questions. So it's more about learning how to think clearly, speak with structure, manage pressure, and present yourself with confidence. Because interviews are not only about what you know, they are more about how well you can communicate your value when it matters, because that time is the only time it matters. And funny enough, some people even give you less than 10 minutes to present your value. And if you don't take advantage of those 10 minutes, you would have lost the opportunity. Many people think that an interview is simply a question and answer session, right? That the interviewer have to ask you questions and then you just have to answer back. Then you wait to see whether you passed it or failed. but at a very higher level. An interview is much more than that. You are not just answering questions. You are being evaluated in real time. Every answer you give is being assessed. Every pause is being noticed. Every example that you share is being compared. Your tone, your confidence, your clarity, your energy, your attitude, and preparation. These are all being evaluated. And the truth is that you are not the only qualified person in that process, you get. For most of us who showed up for interviews, you will realize that by the time you are seated in the hallway, there are 5 other people seated next to you and they came for all the same interview, you get. Most people who are invited for interviews already meet the basic requirement just like you. So the only difference that is going to be there between you and the rest of the candidates there for that interview is how you attend to that interview. It's how you master and be able to give confident response to every question that you're being asked. Not because you will have answers to everything, but even when you don't have an answer, you have to find a way of saying, I don't know, in the most reasonable way possible. Because, yeah, nobody knows everything, right? But you don't just say, I don't know, can you go to the next question? I mean, right? What this means is that the interview is no longer just about whether you are qualified or not. It's about whether you can stand out among the most qualified people. This is where the safety is very important for you, because we are moving away from answering questions to structuring our responses. We are moving from nervousness to controlled delivery. We are moving away from hoping they like me to intentionally positioning myself as the candidate of choice. Because in the interview, hope is not a strategy. At that point, you're not hoping anything. Your strategy is in preparation, in structure, in confidence, and in clarity. You don't need hope at that point, right? You need to have been prepared. You present yourself in the most structured way, have confidence and clarity. Most candidates know what they want to say, but few candidates can say it clearly under pressure. And this is the difference between a candidate who is remembered and a candidate who is forgotten. If people forget you immediately after the interview, you didn't make an impression. I'm telling you, for people who, you had Vera talked about somebody who got the job because they created an impression. They were able to ask questions back to the panel. He was able to respond to all questions. This is something that probably happened years ago, but she's still able to remember exactly how that person tackled the interview. You get the point? So you don't want to be a candidate who is just forgotten. You have to be a candidate who is remembered. So as we go through this session, I want you to keep asking yourself, am I just answering or am I positioning myself? Am I just speaking or am I communicating value? Am I just trying to survive the interview or am I showing them why I am the right person for the role? Here is how hiring decisions are actually made. Many candidates think that the interview panel is only listening to the technical correctness of their answers, right? You think that when they ask you technical questions and you give the correct answers and you think that is the only thing that mattered, right? But interviewers are evaluating more than the words that you speak. They are evaluating 4 things. The first thing is competence. Can you do the job? Do you have the skills, knowledge, exposure, and ability required for this role? T. That is it. Second, confidence. Do you believe what you are saying? You get. It's not us to believe first, it's you to believe. Do you believe what you're saying? Can you speak about your experience without sounding unsure, confused, or unprepared? Confidence does not mean arrogance, no. Confidence means you understand your value and you can communicate it calmly. Number 3, communication. Can you express your thoughts clearly? Can you organize your answers? Can you explain your experience in a way that the panel can easily follow? You may be brilliant, but if your answers are scattered all over the place, the panel may struggle to see your strength. The 4th, connection. We trust this person. Can we imagine working with this person in our team? Does this person seem respectful, teachable, mature, professional? This is very important because recruitment is not only about hiring skills. It is also about hiring someone who will join a team, represent an organization, interact with colleagues, partners, donors, beneficiaries, clients, name it, right? So the interview panel is basically asking, can this person do the work? Can this person communicate? Can this person work well with others? Can we trust this person with responsibility? And here's the truth. A strong answer with poor delivery can still be rejected. But an average answer delivered with clarity, with calmness and structure can create confidence in the panel. That means that it is not just what you say, it is how clearly, confidently, and relevantly you say it. So today, we are not just here to understand how we can build answers, but how we can build performance in the interview. Employers do not conduct interviews just because it is part of a recruitment process, no. They conduct interviews because they are trying to reduce risks. Hiring someone is a very serious decision, right? If they hire the wrong person, it can affect performance, team morale, project delivery, organization reputation, donor compliance, customer service. So the interview helps them to confirm what they could not fully confirm when they read your CV and application letter. Your CV may say you have experience, right? But the interview asks, can you explain that experience? Can you defend it? Can you connect it to the current role? Can you show that you understand what the job requires? So the employers use the interview to validate what you wrote in your CV and application. They want to know whether your experience is real or something that you just faked. They want to see relevance. They want to see transferable skills. They assess fit. This means they are looking at your personality, your attitude, values, and work style. They evaluate thinking as well. They want to see how you approach problems, how you make decisions, how you handle pressure, and how you respond when you do not have a perfect answer. Just like what I said, you may not have the answer to even that question that they're trying to ask you, but you saying, I don't know, in a way that they're able to understand, you get. Employers also test communication. Because in most roles, especially professional roles, your ability to communicate, excuse me, where are we going? There's something taking off my screen. I guess this one, yeah. Right. So I was also saying that employers also test communication because in most roles, your ability to communicate affects almost everything. How you write your emails, how you write your report, how you coordinate with others, how you represent the organization. They also want to understand your level of motivation. Why this role? Why this organization? Why now? Why should we believe you are serious or you are the person that we should work with? And finally, they compare candidates, right? This is where many people forget the reality. You are not being assessed in isolation. You are being compared with others. So the question becomes, what will make them remember you? Not because you were loud, not because you exaggerated everything, not because you tried to impress them, but because you were clear, prepared, relevant, and professional. At the end of the interview, they are really asking, can this person do the job effectively? Will this person work well with the team? Do we feel confident choosing this person? That is the decision you are helping the employer make. This is some of the things we talked about in terms of what the interviewers are basically evaluating. So you can be able to go through the slide. For those of us who have been in interviews, we have probably interacted with any of these interview formats. It's important for us to understand this because different interview formats test different things. I call it format. Some people call it interview types, right? Just to mean the same thing. So the first type of format of interview is, of course, the one-on-one interview. Right? It's usually a direct conversation with one interviewer. It may feel easier because there is only one person, but it still requires clarity, confidence, and preparation. So in a one-on-one interview, you'll find yourself just talking to one person. And of course, there's also a panel interview where you're now involved with multiple interviewers. And this is the most common type of interview ever. Common in NGOs, government offices, corporate settings, name it, right? And each panelist may be looking at something different, right? One person may focus on the technical skills, another person may focus on HR fit, another may focus on communication, another may focus on leadership, attitude, values, name it. Right. So in a panel interview, your ability to engage more than one person matters a lot. There is also a group interview. A group interview is where you are a group of candidates and you are assessed in a group activity or a simulation activity for a group. They basically want to test how you behave around others. Do you dominate the entire group? Do you disappear in the group? Do you listen? Do you contribute respectively? Do you show teamwork and leadership? Right. Then there's also a written or a technical assessment tests or practical tests. They can give you anything written to test you. for driving jobs, they could give you a car and then you go and drive with somebody who can assess how you handle the vehicle. If you're doing a secretariat work, they can give you a report to write or an email to write. Right? If you're an M&E person, they can give you some data for you to analyze or enter some data, depending on the type of role. Then we also have the behavioral or competency-based interview. That focuses mainly on your past experiences. And the logic is very simple. Past behavior often predicts future behavior. So they are asking themselves, tell me about a time when, give an example when, describe a situation when you get. And this is where the STAR method becomes a very important element. And we're going to look at what the STAR method means in a later stage. But the key point is this. The format may change, but the expectation remains the same. You must be clear, you must be structured, you must be professional, and you must be relevant. They're different formats, but all of them requires the same standard. Please mute yourself. I can still hear noise. Modes of interview. There are basically two types or two modes of interviews, which is either physically or virtually. The in-person or the physical interview. So either one of the different types or formats that we talked about in the previous slide falls anywhere within the two. It can be a one-on-one interview, but it can be in person or virtual, you get. So the modes of the interview are either in person or virtual. In an in-person interview, the panel assess your full presence. They see how you walk in. From the time you just walk in, right? How you greet them, how you sit, how you maintain eye contact, how you handle documents, how you carry yourself from the first minute you get. So in-person interviews make body language very visible. That means your posture, facial expression, confidence, and professionalism matters a lot. In a virtual interview, the setting is a bit different. Please mute yourself. Samuel. Is that Gabriel Ring? Can you please mute yourself? Please don't disturb other people who are concentrating. If you have other activities, you would rather just move out of the class and just join back when you're ready to concentrate. So in a virtual interview, the setting is a bit different. In a virtual interview, you may be assessed maybe on Zoom or Google Meet, maybe Microsoft Teams, any other online platform. But even so, don't make the mistake of thinking that the virtual interviews are less serious, right? In fact, the virtual interviews require even more intentionality because your environment becomes part of the impression. They check the elements like the background, your lighting, your internet connection, audio, camera positioning, all of these are tested, you get. So even in a virtual interview, you have to ensure that you maintain the same level of standard as though you are appearing in a physical interview. The only difference between these two is the setup in terms of the location, the tools, the environment, because when you are in an in-person, you may go to the organization's or the company's premises, and then in a virtual setup, you may connect from your place and all that, but maybe join from a device and stuff, right? What stays the same in the two modes of interview is the clarity of answer, the confidence in your delivery, the professionalism, the structure of response, all that stays the same. So I've provided here an overview of the different formats, and you can go through in terms of the interview and what to expect. Also, each is part of the things that we've already talked about. So you can just come and go through them in the slide. Right. So we are going to look at the performance framework. This is one of the most important things that you should remember. The framework is basically very simple. There's the pause, structure, deliver. Many candidates lose control because they start speaking immediately after the question is asked. They feel like silence is dangerous, right? They think if they pause, the panel will think they do not know. But a short pause is not a weakness. A short pause shows control. When a question is asked, take 1 or 2 seconds, so that you can pause. And that pause helps your brain to reorganize. Then structure your answer. Ask yourself quickly, is this a star question? Is this a motivation question? Is this a strength question? Is this a difficult question? Then deliver, right? Speak clearly. Use a steady pace. Stay relevant. Stop when you have answered, right? This framework prevents rambling. It prevents losing your point. It prevents rushing your answers through, and also prevents unclear responses. And it helps you to create control, clarity, and confidence. So from today, when you find yourself in an interview, don't rush into responding immediately. Pause and take a moment to internalize what the question is, and then you respond. It gives you time to choose your best response instead of reacting from panic. I don't know how many of us have heard about the STAR method. The STAR method is a structured way in which you can respond to behavioral or competency-based interview questions. It helps you to tell a story clearly. Not a long story, not dramatic or unrelated story, but a professional story. So a STAR is an acronym, and the S stands for situation. And situation is basically the context. Where were you? What was happening? What was the problem, the challenge, or opportunity that existed? For example, our team was struggling to meet monthly reporting deadlines because field updates were coming in late, right? That is like a situation. And T stands for tasks. This is your responsibility. What were you required to do? What role did you play? What needed to be achieved? For example, I was responsible for coordinating the reporting process and ensuring updates were submitted on time. And then A is for the action. And this is the most important part for the interview. What specifically did you do? Not what the team did generally, what you did, right? For example, I created a weekly tracking sheet, followed up with team members every Friday, and introduced a reminder system before the reporting deadline. So that is the action. That is what you did. And then R, of course, stands for the result. What happened? What improved? What changed? What was achieved? As a result, reporting timelines improved by 40% and the team reduced last-minute corrections. The result gives your answer weight. Without the result, your answer feels incomplete. So whenever you use the STAR method, make sure you do not stop at the action. Take it to the result. And these are some of the behavioral or competency-based questions that you will encounter throughout, right? Just to remember that competency-based or behavioral questions are always asking you to describe something, to tell something. They're always asking for evidence. If you find yourself with any question that says, tell me about a time, when give me an example or describe a situation, share an experience, all these are signals for you to use the STAR method. The goal is not to give the longest answer. The goal is to give a clear answer, right? Strong versus weak answers in any interview setting. Let's compare the two real quick. Weak answers are vague. They sound like, I helped my team complete a project. It is not wrong, but it is weak. Why? Because I do not know what the project was. I do not know what you did exactly as a person. I do not know how you helped. I do not know what changed, right? So weak answers usually have no structure. They focus on duties rather than results. They are long and unfocused. They do not show any impact at all. Strong answers, on the other hand, are different. A strong answer is clear and structured. For example, if you say something like, I supported a team project by organizing weekly check-in and tracking progress, which helped us complete the project on time and improve coordination. Now I can see your action. You organized check-ins, you tracked progress, your project was completed on time, most importantly, because that is the result. Coordination also improved, that is the result, right? And this is a stronger answer because it shows your direct contribution. The difference is in clarity, structure, and evidence of impact. So when you're preparing your answers, ask yourself, is my answer specific? Does it show what I did? Does it show a result? Is it relevant to the role? If your answer has no result, it has no impact. And if it has no impact, it becomes forgettable. So how do we prepare for our interviews? That's why we talked about preparation for interview. Preparation is where confidence is built. Not on the day of the interview, but it starts way before that. You must study the advert, go through it, ensure that you've understood it, because it gives you details about what the employer cares about. Look at the responsibilities, look at the required skills, look at the repeated words, the keywords that we talked about. Look at the competencies. Then research the organization. Do not only know the name of the organization, know its mission, its values, some of the programs, sectors, the target communities, maybe some of its recent works if possible, right? Take time to review your CV and cover letter as well. It's very important. If you wrote something in your CV, be ready to explain it. If you listed a skill, be ready to give it an example, right? If you mentioned a role there, be ready to explain what you did there. And then also go ahead to practice the STAR method. Prepare answers for common interview questions that you probably know. And you can also prepare some 2-3 thoughtful questions that you're going to ask the panel. And then in terms of your logistics also, try as much as possible to confirm again the interview time, the interview date, the venue. Don't call early in the morning the HR or admin person. What time did you say is the interview again? Where is your office again? I'm somewhere here. I think I'm lost. Those are things that you should have done way before, right? Not on the day of the interview, because those are the things that makes you look very disorganized. Plan for a proper outfit way in advance. Some of us miss that part. We show up in very unprofessional attires, and right. For first impression, that is very important. And if you're joining a virtual interview, ensure that you've tested your devices and everything, and ensure that they're all working. And then, of course, arrive early, 10-15 minutes early. Don't let the panel wait for you. Arrive early. Of course, during the interview, right, first impression matters. At the moment you walk in, ensure that you greet professionally, maintain good posture when you are seated, so calm, confidence, right? And start with a positive attitude. And when you're communicating, ensure that you listen fully to the question before starting to answer, and pause and use the performance as a framework when you are responding. Ensure that you are audible enough, speak clearly at a very steady pace, and keep answers concise and relevant. And then when structuring your answers, ensure that you use the STAR method when you're responding to competency-based or behavioral questions. Focus on achievements, not just listing of your duties in the interview. And then stay relevant. Bring everything relevant. Bring everything back to the job. Bring everything back to the job, so that whenever you're explaining something, you link it back. You link it back to
Certainly.
the
Let's
job.
ensure every
Right. Sorry about that. And then, of course, during the interview, there are times that pressure can be really high. So ensure as much as possible that you stay calm, and even when there's a lot of pressure, particularly for a panel interview where there's so many people are questioning you at the same time. And then avoid negative comments about your past employers. Do not talk about your past employer at all, right? And then enthusiasm and interest in the role, and engage thoughtfully by asking the employer also thoughtful questions, and also show curiosity about the role and organization. And of course, immediate actions for you after the interview. You could appreciate the interviewers at the end of the interview. You can send a follow-up email within 24 hours, again, to reconfirm your interest in the role. Those are some of the immediate actions that you can take. Professional contact, always ensure that you're patient. Avoid repeated follow-ups. Do not call today, send a mail and all that at the same time. And stay reachable for communication. And then maintain professionalism even when you are uncertain about the outcome of the interview. Right. So those are some of the immediate actions that you can take after participating in any interview. Managing interview anxiety. For most of us, why we feel nervous is because of fear of being judged, fear of saying the wrong thing. We sometimes also overthink our answers, and then there's a pressure for us to perform perfectly, right? And that makes us to feel very nervous. And when that happens, we end up rushing through. It causes us to forget even some of the simplest things that we know. It reduces clarity completely and then affects your confidence. How you can manage anxiety is by ensuring that you are fully prepared for your interview. Don't show up to an interview where you're not fully prepared. Practice out your answers loudly as much as possible. Breathe slowly and stay present in the moment. And then when you find yourself being anxious, a simple reset technique, something that can work, is to take deep breath, pause for 1 or 2 seconds before answering, and then also focus on one question at a time, right? And then always tell yourself that this is not an exam, it's not a test of perfection. It is basically a professional conversation that you're having with the employer. You already know these things. You just basically need to package and present what you know in a most professional way. Right. 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 So here are some of the etiquette that we should keep in mind. In terms of our professional appearance and dressing, ensure that you are dressed appropriately, and your whatever you're going to wear must be clean, neat, and well-pressed clothing. Choose professional colors, right? Don't appear in very loud colors that are not professional. Avoid bold prints, flashy designs, and very heavy accessories, very loud makeups that do not communicate professionalism. In terms of your hair, ensure that those are all neat and well groomed. And then your shoes also must be clean and so applicable, because people will be able to judge you based on what you wear. And then in terms of for an interview that you're going to do in person, arrival and presentation, ensure that you arrive very early to the interview. While you're in the interview, ensure that you switch off your phone. The instances where candidates have their phones on and it is ringing during the interview, you can imagine it. Ensure that you are constantly maintaining eye contact, and you sit confident throughout the interview. When you're being asked the question, listen attentively and listen to understand. Avoid interrupting the interviewer when they're asking questions, and keep your answers clear and concise. And then so that you are interested in the role by asking questions back to the interviewers. And for virtual interviews, prepare your space. Ensure that your environment is quiet with zero interruptions, where you have a very neutral or a professional background, not the one where people are able to see maybe your bed, your mosquito nets and all that. Ensure that there's good lighting so that your face is very visible for a video call. And also check that your equipments are working properly. And when you're on camera, please look directly into the camera, because that is how you are maintaining eye contact through a virtual interview session. Sit upright, maintain good posture when you're seated. And when you're speaking, you speak clearly and at a moderate pace, not when you're rushing and rambling through everything and people are struggling to hear what you're trying to say. Avoid fidgeting or avoid very unnecessary movements, because they are seeing what you're doing, right? And keep your phone on silent so that you don't have any distractions. In terms of communication and behavior, yes, speak politely and professionally. Avoid slangs or fillers, or very long answers that becomes boring or that people will fail to keep track of when you are presenting your answers. Keep a calm, positive attitude. So respect even if the interview is tough, because yes, sometimes you may face very tough panels, but ensure that you show respect. Don't speak negatively about your previous employers. And then, of course, ask thoughtful questions. Body language. If you have a very strong body language, it shows confidence, engagement, professionalism, and emotional control. What you should do when you are in an interview is to ensure that you're seated upright with good posture, maintaining natural eye contact. Use controlled hand gestures. For those of us who use a lot of gestures when we are speaking, when we are talking, ensure that the gestures that you're trying to use are controlled. And some gestures may mean different things in other cultures. So it's very important for you to understand this, right? And also smile naturally. That shows how easy of a person that you are. And when you are listening, try to show indications that you're listening by trying to nod so that somebody understands that, yes, they are listening. Then, of course, some of the things you should not do that can weaken your presentation is by leaning back or slouching. And then you just lean back on the chair. It's like, yeah, you're the boss around here and you don't care, right? Avoiding eye contact. If you don't look at the panel at all, right, they feel like you're somebody who is not very confident. And if you're fidgeting, your hands are shaking, your legs are shaking. You're holding an object in your hand and it's literally shaking, right? It's a bad sign. It shows that you're not confident enough. And then you cross your arms, you cross your legs. All of those are signals that you are not in control of your emotions. When you look distracted or disengaged, so when they're talking to you, you're not showing that you are paying attention to what they're saying. It shows that you are disengaged. And for a virtual setup, ensure that you are looking at the camera straight, not at the screen of your phone or your laptop, and keep your face more visible and in a well-lit environment. And then minimize movement and distractions. For some of us, we have a lot of things going on in the background and it keeps popping up here and there. That could signal unprofessionalism in any interview setting. Handling difficult questions. So sometimes you would be in an interview and then you get asked very difficult questions. Some of the things that I would personally like to call difficult questions are questions like, what is your biggest weakness? Sometimes people don't like to talk about their weakness, right? So that can be a difficult question for some people. Tell me about a failure. People don't want to talk about a failure, right? And why did you leave your previous role, right? Explain a gap in your experience. Some of these I term it to be difficult questions because, right, people don't really want to explain some of these questions. That's why they are called difficult questions. And first of all, when you face any of these questions, acknowledge it. Don't avoid or deflect the question. Don't try to dodge it. Don't try to ask for a pardon or skip it. Acknowledge it and be honest. Give a real professional response to this question. And explain what you learned or improve. If you're talking about a weakness, for example, explain what that weakness is and how you are working on it already. Again, redirect to value and end with a positive note, something relevant that you've taken away. If it was a failure, okay, what did you learn from this failure? And what is it that you've taken note of, right, from this failure that you're going to improve moving forward? So those are some of the ways you can find yourself approaching some of these questions that may seem difficult from the onset. Great. And then the salary expectation strategy. For most people, when they are asked on salary expectation, is like the most difficult question in this life, right? And normally this question is asked to test your confidence, to assess your market awareness for this role, and to also check if you are aligned with their budget, right? Those are some of the reasons why people ask for your expectation. There's a common mistakes that most of us do is giving a number too quickly. Like, I want $300, right? So how did you arrive at the $300, right? And then some people undersell themselves. You are applying for an officer role and then you say, I want to earn $300. Who pays an officer $300, right? You undersell yourself. And then sounding unsure or unprepared, meaning you are not aware of what is happening in the job market. And then focusing on salary too early. Like when they ask you, okay, so what motivated you to apply? Like, I heard that this employer pays very well, so I'm interested in, you are focusing on earning instead of focusing on the part where you're supposed to come and contribute to the organization, and also you will learn and grow as a professional, right? And the salary is in the second place. But if you focus on the salary two-step, well, yeah, you focus too early, then that can be a mistake, right? What you can do is to, delay. Say, I'm open to a competitive offer. Once I receive the offer, I can look at it. right? And then you can say something like, based on my research for the similar roles, I feel a range between this amount to that amount will do. So you're providing a range so they can fit, it can fit whatever it is that they are thinking about. And then you can also, since you don't know what kind of package, compensation package is available, you can also ask them to clarify. So what compensation package are available? So for some people, they offer a lot of benefits. Then in that case, you can say you're flexible depending on the responsibilities and the overall package that the organization is presenting, right? What this will show is that there's confidence, awareness, professionalism, but most importantly, flexibility in terms of your expectation. Right. So these are some of the common interview questions that you may meet throughout interviews, like tell me about yourself, you know. Yeah, I'm not going to go over this because of time. So these are things that you can come and read through and just for you to understand. Why should we hire you? What are your strengths? These are some very common interview questions that you'll find. What is your biggest weakness? Tell me about a time you faced a challenge, something like that. Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? What are your salary expectations? Why do you want to work with our organization? Do you have any questions for us? Right. So those are some common interview questions that you will probably meet along the way as you position yourself in the job market. And then some common mistakes for us to avoid: poor preparation. We talked a lot about preparation. It's very important for you to ensure that you are constantly prepared when you are showing up for an interview. And then arriving late, right? Whether it is physical or virtual, please don't arrive late for your own interview. It gives a very bad first impression. And then inappropriate dressing, whether you are too casual, too flashy, or basically very unprofessional attire. That's a mistake. And then weak or unclear communication, right? When you're in the interview, you're basically saying a lot of things that do not make sense, right? And then poor body language, of course, when there's no eye contact, there's slouching, crossed arms, or your distracted behavior, and all of those are some common mistakes that we see through these interviews. Right. Another mistake is speaking negatively about your previous employer. How this happens is that sometimes you're asked, so why do you want to leave your previous employer to want to come and join here? And then you find some candidates saying, oh, that organization, the boss is very bad. They used to do it, right? To never speak negatively about your previous employer. And then some of us do not ask questions, right? If you don't ask questions, it signals that you don't have interest, right? So ask questions to the employer. And then stop giving very generic answers where there is no result, there is no clear indication of the kind of actions that you took, right? Avoid very vague statements like, I'm a hardworking, so just prove what hardworking means, right? And then not following instructions, right? So those are some of the common mistakes that we make, that we can try to avoid as early as possible. That way we are able to increase our chances. Now, when you are in an interview, you should also remember that you are evaluating the employer, right? When you are in an interview, you don't know this employer. So that is the only chance for you to also evaluate the employer, to evaluate the people that work there, to evaluate the entire organization, right? And so it's very important for you to pay attention to some red flags. What I call red flags are just signals that that signals that this is not a very good workplace, right? Because as you're praying for a job, you must pray for one where the work environment is actually conducive, right? And how you can tell that this is not a good place is if the entire interview process is very disorganized, right? And you are in an interview, you don't even have a link. 20 minutes later, somebody's sending you, okay, now join from this link. Or they cancel the interview time and date. Again, they cancel. Again, they cancel. Or you show up, the people who are supposed to interview, they're either in other activities. It's like they even forgot that they had an interview. Once you are in a place where there's a very disorganized interview process, it means that there are poor internal control systems. So it's possible that that workplace is a very chaotic workplace. Right. Again, if there was no clear job description, the role is not fully defined, duties seem too vague or inconsistent, they are avoiding giving direct answers about responsibility. For example, if you ask them a question, so what will this person be doing maybe in the first 3 months of probation? What does success look like in this role? They are not able to answer properly. It's because they don't have a clearly defined role, a clearly defined JD for this role. So what this may mean is that you may take on more than what you will sign up for, right? High turnover rate, yes. If the employer has a very high turnover rate, they may mention many resignations, the team constantly replacing people here and there. It means that people are leaving either from poor work culture, from bad leadership, or very unrealistic expectations. So these are some of the things that you pay attention to when they're also responding to some of the questions on how they give introductions about the organization and company. And if the interviewers behave unprofessionally, they are rude, they are dismissive, right? Their tone is very bad. They make very inappropriate comments, not respect. Can please mute yourself? I mute you. Right. So if the interviewers are also behaving unprofessionally, what that would mean is that there's a lot of disrespect inside the organization. So that's some red flag that you should watch for. Right. And if you ask them about pay packages and all that, and there's no transparency in terms of the salary that they're willing to give, they are vague, right. So there is a potential for exploitation or unfair compensation. If there are people speaking badly about their previous employees, for instance, you'll be asking, so is this like a new role, or was there a previous employee in this role? Why did the employee leave? When they start talking badly about that employee, you will know that this kind of environment may be very toxic or a very unsupportive sort of environment. And then you can be able to check, because these are some signals that you should keep in mind when you approach any employer, because you may also not last long in that workplace. As you're praying for the job, make sure that you're praying for a good workplace. And of course, some ethical or safeguarding concerns also very important for you to keep in mind. Right. So Exactly 3:30. That's nice. Some things for you to keep in mind. Prepare thoroughly for all interviews. Arrive early and present yourself professionally, whether you are going for a virtual or an in-person interview. First impression matters a lot, so ensure that you are confident, you're clear, and also saw a lot of courtesy in your communication. Use clear, concise, and more structured answers. Demonstrate a positive body language. Avoid some of the common mistakes that we've talked about, like rambling, negative talk, like lateness, poor dressing, right? And then look out for some of the employer red flags, because yes, you are also evaluating the employer, not just them evaluating you. You can do a follow-up after the interview, then that's a good thing. And then most important thing for you to do is to reflect on your performance and prepare better for next time. So check how you performed in this interview, right? When you go back, reflect, ask yourself, so how did I perform? Which question did I not do well in? What was the issue? Was it my nerves? Did it get the better of me? Was it a technical question that I was asked that I didn't have an answer to? So how do I prepare? This way you are able to use this experience to improve yourself for the next interview. Great. So I think, yeah, that brings us to the end of the session. So we break off to a Q&A session. And before then, right, I want to clarify on what you're going to send me as your assignment. I want to assume, so we did mention that the last weekend session on the job analysis, yesterday's session and today's session are all linked up sessions. First of all, I'd ask you, go and identify a job that you'd like to apply for. And I assume that you got one. For those of us who don't have, or who are not in a position to apply for any job at the moment, get any role that is in line with what you're studying, what you've studied, right, that you would like to pursue in future. That's one. So if you got that last week, you analyzed that job. Correct. You send in that analysis. Yesterday, since you finished that analysis, now you go and tailor your application letter and CV so that we can now go ahead and apply for this job. For those of you who are applying for a real job, when you are sending me your application and the CV, please leave a comment there for me to tell me that this is a real job that you are trying to apply for. And what you should put there is a copy of the advert, right? So at the time of submitting your analysis, you are also attaching a copy of the advert that you analyzed, so that when I look at your analysis and I also look at the advert, I will see what you've analyzed versus what is on the advert and tell you if this is comprehensive enough. For those who are applying for real jobs, I'm saying this again, drop a message in the classroom there for me and tell me that this is a real job that you're trying to apply for, so that when I'm looking at your application letter and CV, I will help you give feedback that can help you directly improve these two documents so that you go ahead and submit that application. And because I may take a while to look at it, please send a message to Simon with your name, and then he will tell me that so and so has submitted their application and CV and they're applying for an actual job, so that I give you feedback now that you can use to improve and then submit your application. That is for the part of yesterday. Now, today, I'm assuming that you've successfully submitted your CV and application letter, and you've been invited for an online panel interview, right? I want you to go and record yourself in a 10-minute video. Do it yourself. If you have a phone holder, yes. If you don't have, get someone who can ask you these questions, and then you respond in a video and you record it. Don't do a lot of Canva things, a lot of formatting and all that. Be as natural as possible and ensure that you are putting into action everything that we've covered. Answer these questions. Tell me about yourself. Answer that question. I want to see how you talk about yourself. How do you present yourself? What has motivated you to apply for this position? If it's any job that you've picked in the analysis, what has motivated you to apply for that job? Answer that part. Tell me why I should consider you. We talked about you competing with other people. So this is your value proposition, your elevator pitch. Why you and not the rest of the candidate, right? Respond to that. Again, tell me what are the strengths that you feel align with this job. Mention those strengths that you have. And then what would you say is your greatest weakness and how are you managing it? Now turn this into an MP4 file and then submit it through the classroom. Someone will be there to provide you guidance in terms of how and all that. But I thought it was necessary for me to clarify the structure of all of these assignments. Great. I'm going to stop here, stop sharing my screen. Samuel, if you're there, please take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Brenda, for such insightful and knowledgeable presentation. I was enjoying it and following it keenly. I hope also you guys do the same on your side. So let's do this quick. I really encourage everybody to always stay behind. Don't leave immediately after the presentation. And so there are things that be added by your colleagues that also be added by the mentors that can also help you out. So that's why most of us sometimes face challenges doing the assignment because the things that you always leave out, you leave the call early. So without wasting time, I think we're just going to have some Q&A a moment. We have about 21 minutes, so let's make use of such minutes. I think we have a first question. That's from Malish Kennedy. So Brenda, you're going to go straight into that. He asked two questions. And also we have another big question from Vera. So those are the two people that have two questions in the chat. So I can see Jane already. So Jane, your hands is up. Please you can unmute and proceed to the question. And also comments and another colored question are also out. So I'm going to share the attendance. It's going to be the chart. I'm posting it already. So please make sure you fill the attendance before we end the call, before you leave the call. If there's any emergency, but you will have to attend to this question. So thank you once again. So Jen, please you can unmute and proceed to the question.
Thank you, Samuel, and thank you, Brenda, for the wonderful session. It's really helpful. My question is just one. Like, for example, if I'm being interviewed, how do I effectively steer the conversation back if I realize my first answer didn't land well? How do I deal with that?
Pardon? I didn't get that.
Okay, my question is, like, how do I steer the conversation back if I realize my first answer didn't land well? Isn't correct or something?
How do I steer back
You
the
got me?
conversation if my first answer Yeah, I'm trying to interpret.
Yeah, I think just at the initial, sometime when you answer, you feel like you did not answer it well, and you see it from the facial attention of the panelists, you feel like yeah. So the expression you get from the panelists, you feel like they did not maybe see the question very well. I think that's what we like. You feel like you did answered well.
Yeah. Okay. It depends on at what point you are at. At what point you are at in the interview. But the most important thing for you to remember is it's very easy for you to get on track. First of all, try to pause and stop speaking for a moment. Take a breather, right? And don't try to fix it while still talking, right? And you don't need to say I was wrong. Use very professional language like let me clarify that for a moment. Let me reframe my response, or you would say something like, I'd like to approach that more clearly. You get this shows awareness and weakness. Don't say, I think I said it wrongly. Let me correct it, right? You don't admit that kind of thing in any interview. You just use more a professional language for you to restructure. Then go back with that, and then try to now answer the question directly, right? And then try to deliver it with a lot of confidence, right? Don't apologize for being confident. Don't sound unsure when you're giving the response. Speak as if it was the intended answer, right? For example, you start rambling or you miss the question recovery and say, let me reframe my answer to make it clearer. In this situation, my main responsibility was, what I did was, and the result was, you get. So you are coming back very fast to come and reframe the entire story where you missed the question or you basically gave an incorrect question. And don't think that they noticed it. Sometimes they've not even noticed that you gave a wrong answer, right? These people are seated there, but some of them are into other things. So don't go and start admitting it. You just say, okay, let me reframe. It's not about being perfect in the interview. That's what we said. It's about staying clear, calm, and in control of what happens. That is the most important thing. And that's the only thing that I can say.
I think Brenda put it clearly and powerfully. Like she said, like I could say on my end, like, yeah, it's more like the confidence, understand, and also the mindset that you have already in mind. You will be like, maybe you feel like in the past did not give you full intention. So, understand. So just give it your best, like, the preparation and also the confidence that in you. She also mentioned about like the assurance, like you don't have to speak as if you're not sure of what you are saying, because it will give that impression that you are not ready and you are not even sure of what you are saying. You understand? So, Jane, I hope you answered. Yeah, okay, thank you, Jane. So as we still receive more questions and also comments, Brenda, please you can go through the question in the chat as we also welcome those who feel like they want to throw the questions on the mic. So please feel free to ask a question on the mic, and don't forget that attendance is in the chat. Clear it out as soon as possible before we end our session. So we have more minutes, 15 minutes for the closure time to ask question, to add comment, and also some clarification also concerning the assignment. You can also ask anything. Yeah, let's keep it running.
Is there a question that I needed to respond to? I didn't catch that, Salma.
Yeah, there's question from, I think there's actually two questions. That's from Malish. That's from Malish.
Malish in the chat. Okay, let
Yeah,
me see that.
Malish Kennedy, and the other one is that's from Vera. Those are the
Malish,
two
Malish.
questions. Malish Kennedy.
I would
Let's try
like
to
to
go
know
through.
if it's right to accept offers like water by the panel on arrival
Exactly.
or after the interview. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, it's perfectly appropriate for you to accept that kind of gesture. It's a normal gesture of hospitality and it does not affect anything in any way. So yeah, you can accept that, but do not accept things that goes beyond water. I know for some of us, we like a lot of familiarity, right? And then you walk in, and then somebody says, "Oh, we have tea, we have this," and then you find yourself at the cafeteria going to take tea, and then you even forget the reason why you're there. Please, water is okay, but anything extra than water, just say no, thank you. Go and attend to your interview. And maybe if you like to do a lot of the familiarity, you can do that once you're done with the interview. And again, don't do things that are extra that creates some sort of impression of who you are. But accepting water is okay. Even when you are in the interview, for instance, you have a cough, right? And then it irritates you. And then you can just ask them, "Can I get a glass of water?" Right? You can ask for water. And they can give you. And then if you have a bottle somewhere and you need to sip it, you can say, "You can excuse me for a bit. I take a sip of water," so that you can sip it and then just get back. Please. An interview is not like a court session. Even in a court, you can't ask for water. Please. It is a conversation between you and the employer. The intention of those people is not to judge you. Their intention is to find somebody they need to work with. So they're not going to stop everything for you. No, you're going to have a conversation with them. So please ensure that you're having a conversation. If you even need to go to a washroom, you can excuse yourself, but just excuse yourself before that. Because let's say you have a 20-minute interview and you need to go to a washroom and you take 10 minutes and you come back, you've already utilized all your time, right? But those kind of things are normal, right? And when your nerve is getting the better of you, right, it normally happens. But feel free to excuse yourself so that, right, you do not blow up your opportunity to present yourself properly. And your second question, additionally, what can I do as a candidate when the position I'm interviewed for gets split and I'm asked to choose one? For example, the advert reads fleet and logistics officer, and then I'm asked to choose either one. I don't know at what point somebody will be telling you that we've split the role, right? Because first of all, by the time you start advertising, you should already be clear if this is a role that needs to be done by one person or two people, right? And if it is a thing of restructuring within the company or organization, maybe. But for you as a candidate, this calls for clarity and self-awareness, right? Instead of choosing randomly or feeling pressured, take a moment to ask for brief clarification on the expectation of each role, right? Like what is expected of this role, what is expected of the other role. Reflect on where your strength and experience align most strongly. If your experience and strength are more on the fleet, then you work with the fleet role. If your strength aligns more on the logistics side, then you choose the logistics side. And choose confidently and briefly. Just and justify your choice briefly. For example, you can say something like, based on my experience, I will be more comfortable focusing on a logistics role as I have a stronger exposure, maybe or a stronger previous experience in coordination, procurement process, operational support, and all that. However, I remain open to contributing to fleet-related tasks when needed, right? This shows clarity, confidence, strategic thinking, and also flexibility. Let's always remember that interviewers or interviews are not just about answering questions, but about demonstrating how you think and make decisions in real time, right? I hope that answers your question. And then what's the other question? Vera, how common are VA jobs? Does the line of interview remain the same? Vera, if you're here, if you don't mind, please pick up on this. Does the line of interviewing remain the same? What does that mean?
Yes, Brenda. What I meant by that is the common virtual assistance jobs that are usually, of course, most of them are through virtual. But uh, how the selection of the candidates is done is what I meant. Does it entail, the professionalism? Because the distance would be, let's say it's long distance. Let's say the job is for someone in Europe and I'm in Africa, and I want to do the VA job. The way I'll be interviewed, maybe let's say in person, will it be the same way?
Okay. On how common VA roles are, yes, VA roles are actually increasingly very common globally, right? And for our case in South Sudan, not at all, but other parts of the world, yes. So, especially with the increase in remote working, there are many startups, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and even large organizations. They rely on virtual assistants for a number of their administrative, operational, and even sometimes more specialized support, like social media management, customer service, scheduling, research, and all of those. And so, yes, opportunities are there, particularly if you position yourself well online, right? So if you are somebody who is if you are looking at building a career as a VA, ensure that right now you are positioning yourself well, and you are positioning yourself online, like platforms like LinkedIn. That's where you're positioning yourself, because these are remote roles. So you must be visible online and then demonstrate a very strong communication and organizational skills. And so reliability and ability to work independently. Because if you're working remotely, you don't have very close supervision. So people need to be able to trust you to deliver even when they are not seeing you. And on whether the interview process is the same, the core principle remains the same, right? But there are a few important differences. What remains the same is that you are still evaluated based on clarity, confidence, communication, and relevance to the role. What is different in VA interview is there is a lot more focus on communications. Since you will work remotely, how clearly you speak becomes even more important. There is more emphasis on self-management. They will assess time management, discipline, ability to work without supervision. They will give you a lot of practical tasks you get for you to accomplish. You may be asked to write an email, to manage a calendar, to do a small research task, ABCD. because it is more practical. They also want to see if you are technology aware. You may be asked about tools like Google Workspace, Zoom, Slack, other task management tools. So you must be aware, right? So for VA roles, always demonstrate reliability, responsiveness, attention to detail, clear and more professional communication, right? The interview structure may adjust slightly, right? But the candidate who communicates clearly, shows organization, and demonstrates reliability will always stand out for any VA role. I hope that answers your question.
Malish and Vera, if that answers your question, please give it a thumb up.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond back. She spoke eloquently enough. I got the answers I needed for the questions I asked. These are questions that were raised on the perspective of the experience. In the past years, I've been exposed to interviews. Once again, I thank the presenter for the presentation today.
Yes, and from you,
Thank you,
Vera.
Malish.
Thank you, Malish. Vera?
Thank you.
Okay,
Hope we
3
are all
minutes to
clear
the
with the
stoppage time.
assignments.
Okay, if that's wrap up today's presentation, thank you so much, guys, for really having this time to do this wonderful presentation led by Brenda. We appreciate your time and your commitment to our this fellowship. And we're almost there, guys. Let's keep it rolling. Let's keep the energy, the vibes. We're almost there. And I would like to put this across. I have seen most of your messages in the WhatsApp group. I've been under the weather for the past few days, so that's why I never responded to any of your texts. I hope I'm gonna work on that today. And if please you're still facing challenges working on the assignment, you will have to let me know in the chat. So I think that's end of our today's session. Anything, just always be there in the WhatsApp help and assistance. You'll always be there to help. I'm also grateful for those who also make sure to help their fellows who happen to be in need of help. I really appreciate also your work and so the kind of hearts you guys are having. So thank you so much, guys, for joining today's presentation once again. So let's end our call from here. And so see you next weekend. And bye. Have a wonderful week ahead of you. Thank you. See you. If you have anything, we're going to be behind for some part of news and I think that you will also you can also raise them later after maybe the time. So feel free to leave the call, guys, and see you. Okay. And attendance, it's right in the chat. Feel free to fill it out.
Thank you, Samuel. And for those of us who are still here, as you prepare to leave, I just want you to remember this simple truth, right? Interviews are not about being perfect. They're more about being clear, confident, and very intentional about your responses. And we've seen today that it's not just what you say, it's how you structure it, it's how you deliver it, it's how you carry yourself in that moment, right? And many candidates walk into interviews hoping things will go well, but strong candidates walk in prepared to perform. So from today, shift from guessing to preparing, from rushing to structuring, and from nervousness to control. Because opportunities do not go to the most qualified. or the most experienced, they go to candidates who communicate their value most clearly. And remember this, every interview is not just an opportunity to be selected, it's an opportunity to improve, refine yourself, and grow. So as you go forward, prepare deeply, practice intentionally, show up with confidence, and most importantly, trust in your ability. You are not just answering the questions, you are presenting your value. Always keep that in mind. Every interview that you find yourself in, you are presenting your value. And you're doing that by having a conversation with those people. They're not there to judge you and tell you how terrible you are. No, because they need you. They want you to come work for them. They want the kind of skill that you have. That's why they want to have that conversation with you. So see it as a conversation that you're going to have with these people. If you are really that important, they're going to listen. They're going to listen to everything that you have to say. Turn your hands up.
Yeah, actually, it is wonderful for giving me this opportunity. And then I have to really apologize for what I did yesterday. Even until now, it seems that it's still there. Because my phone having a drive issue. Even now, the chat is not even appearing on my phone. I don't know exactly what is going on. It is a nice presentation. The interview always is not that first pass about as you said before. It is not about the way you expect it to be. It is always the confidence and the way you communicate. Whenever you're giving chance in the interview, those people, they don't mean that the chance that they're giving to you, they don't need the perfects, but they need how you respond and how the value are you when you're actually willing to join the company. And then thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's